Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. We're so excited to have you and be joined by our experts for today's roundtable, the do's and don'ts to simplify your artist advance in 2022. My name is Erin Chesterton, and I'm the marketing manager here at Lend. Just some quick housekeeping before we kick off today's roundtable. This session is being recorded, and I will follow up with the full recording and some key highlights tomorrow, so stay tuned for an email from me in your inbox. We have a few polls, as you can see off to the right, so please feel free to participate in those throughout the session. And also, we would love to engage with everyone in the chat, so we have that as an open-ended place where anyone can feel free to chime in, ask questions, and we can try our best to incorporate those in real time. If not during the session, we'll be sure to follow up with you after the fact. So with that, I will kick it off to Chris, and we'll get the session going.
Cool.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Erin. Hey, everybody. We'll get going here in like another minute, just probably as people kind of rolling in. It was pretty cool to see the folks from around the world who are interested in this topic. So I'm excited to, really be a part of the conversation. We always learn a ton through these conversations, which is why we do it. It's really fun for just us to take a step back and share amongst the different pros throughout the world, and that are all focused on some aspect of the event operations piece. And today, as Erin mentioned, we're really just going to try to dig into all things artist and talent advancing. Before I get going, I know there's a lot of folks that have a lot of experience that are also attending. So, be sure to use the chat or use the polls to, ask questions, give your own advice. I mean, we're all here to, also learn. So feel free to use that as much as possible. So I'll kick it off now. I'm Chris Carver, the co-founder and CEO of Lend. And I'm excited to have these three folks on the roundtable today. Just a wealth of knowledge, ton of experience, and what I really respect about each one of these is that they're willing to share. It's not something that is always as accessible in our space, and we thought we would create an area where we can share these topics. So on the panel today is Anna Wismer. Anna has a ton of experience. I'll let her kind of give her background in a moment. Her company she kind of runs is Blackthorn Productions, but like I said, a ton of great festival experience and live event experience. Mark Sperling, founder of Group Y. I was really excited to have Mark as well because he just has a diverse background over 25, 30 years. And so it was really, really exciting to be able to have Mark a part of this. I think he can talk to a broad set of talent. And then there's Alex Balancia, who also has a ton of experience out of the Midwest, as she'll tell you. And all of these folks that we'll talk, I'm excited to have them give perspectives from both sides, from the organizer side, but also from the talent side. I think we'll be able to glean some great feedback from them. So, Alex, do you mind, kicking it off and just giving a little bit about your background for a couple minutes so that everybody can glean some of that experience?
Yeah, no problem. Hi, I'm Alex, and I'm based out of Chicago, Midwest area. I have been doing festivals for about 10, 15-ish years. I'm currently an independent contractor. I work largely with React Presents, doing Spring Awakening is our big electronic music festival. And then I also handle pretty much all their other events. I also run artist relations for Summer Smash, which is Lyrical Lemonade and Speaker Boxes festival. And take care of, a bunch of different, 1,500 plus shows and festivals for different promoters. And then I also act as the assistant tour manager or production coordinator, depending on the show, for Grizz.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for joining, and appreciate you doing this. Anna, why don't you go next?
Unmute myself here. Well, thank you. Thank you for having us, Chris, and thank you for that introduction. My name's Anna Wismer. I'm the owner of Blackthorn Productions, along with my partner and sister, Grace Wismer. But we've been in the industry for many years. I started in 2009, Rothbury Festival, and have just continued to grow in the industry since then. I started as an intern, and it's one of my passion projects to continue on with that student staff program today for Electric Forest Festival. So that's one of my greatest accomplishments and something that we really love still participating in and bringing in students to the music festival world, and where I got my start. But Grace and I started Blackthorn Productions in 2017. And we love working in the festival industry. We work, our largest clients are Electric Forest Festival, Country Nation events, Lost Lands, and Pilgrimage Festival we've been with since the inception. But I also was on the touring side of things while working festivals in my younger years as well. So hopefully I can lend a little bit to both sides. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. And Mark.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. My name is Mark Sperling. I'm the co-founder of Group Y. We're a networking collective of professionals in the youth marketing and youth culture space. We've produced over 250 events since 2006 with about 800 plus speakers from all different industries and such. Besides producing our own events, we also work doing the talent producing for events like Complex Con, Agenda Festival, Pharrell's Something in the Water Festival, Hall of Flowers, and a number of others. We also run our own dinner series called Two Farm Tables and a Microphone, which is kind of a unique spin on the dinner talk series. I've been in events for over 30 plus years, working in the early days of helping create the Warped Tour, Lollapalooza, working for the Hard Rock Cafe, Live Nation, and Red Bull. So it's great to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Alex, why don't you kick it off with the first question, if you don't mind? How would you describe the artist advance process? How would you define that for somebody?
There are a lot of elements to it. It usually starts around the booking phrase time period of it. But I start working on things even before then. Pretty much as soon as I know what the venue is, I'll start working on vendors and building the advance. I'll have a general template and approach that I know that I want to take. And then from there, kind of filling in the details like a puzzle. And then meeting personal deadlines for getting things out and following up and carrying it all the way to day of show and bringing people in.
So it's about, as most of the folks know, this is kind of a softball, but it's about kind of handling and managing and communicating with all of the artists to make sure that they're on time and they've submitted everything. Is that safe to say? Anna, any thoughts there?
I loved the word puzzle, Alex, because it is a communication puzzle. That's literally all it is. We have to be in very clear communication in order to coordinate logistics, and that's literally all it is. So that communication can take place a myriad of ways, but I'm sure all of us on this call and many of us that are watching along have a template that they follow along and like to use, and that varies from event to event, but it's just communication.
Awesome. And again, you guys, all three of you can't, by all means, throw in any advice or whatever. If I call you out, great. But just for clarification's sake, Mark, if you have anything, that would be awesome. But again, don't feel like you have to answer.
No problem. I'll jump in when I need to.
Cool. Perfect. So jumping into kind of the very beginning as I see it, where does the role for many of the bigger festivals, I guess, but I'm curious how it changes as the festival size and type kind of changes. Where does the role of the booking team end and the advance begin in your guys' mind? Anna, do you want to start there?
Yeah, for me, where it kind of ends is once that the contractual points have been negotiated. I really don't want anything to do with that, nor do I need to. But the points that I need to have communicated to me once that is done is their guest allotments. That's really important. And then any points that are going to cost the festival a lot of money that I know are approved of, like transportation is a huge one because that falls under the artist relations umbrella. And we would need to know that before we start advancing and say, no, you don't get that, when they might actually have agreed to those kind of points that are maybe a little bit more expensive. And then also the contact sheet is then handed off to me from whoever's doing the booking, like usually their assistant, but like I need to know how to reach these tour managers, and having a nice grid and have it laid out for me is like super helpful. Sometimes it just comes in riders, which is also okay. I can make the grid ourselves, but it is something that they need to provide to us to then carry out the rest of our advanced process.
So it's ideal that if in your ideal world, it's a grid with the artist manager, contact information, cell phone, email, anything else on that?
I actually don't need to talk to the artist manager at that point. Okay. I only need the tour manager and the production manager.
Okay, cool. And Alex, any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, I actually like to, if I can, have access to the contract itself. This way I can just kind of go through. Most of them are the same, you know, general templates and boilerplates and things like that, but just to be able to go through it myself, like Anna said, knowing where the variation is. It may be a festival that's majority no transportation or limited transportation, but you always have those exceptions to every rule with that. So being able to see that and then reference that, and especially if there's any like discrepancy or pushback with the artist team, it's always helpful to have more information than less with that. And I second, having contacts is always a gift. Always feels really nice, so that it doesn't start with a hunt or, trying to reach out to absolutely anybody to follow the rabbit hole of who you actually need to talk to.
And Mark, go ahead, Anna.
Sorry, if we get it our way and I can see what they're redlining, I try and tell them not to redline as much in the hospitality world and say per advance, because we're going to talk to them either way. So that's just one thing. If a booker's asking me anything, that's my 2 cents, is like, just say per advance, keep it vague. You don't need to redline that they want 2% milk. We'll deal with that later,
That's funny. And Mark, how is that different lately in your world, dealing with celebrity speakers and things of that nature?
Yeah, it's a little bit of combination of both what Anna and Alex talked about. In my case, I'm actually involved in the negotiations from day one, doing the outreach, working with the talent bookers on that. And then they hand it over to me, and I'm actually doing the contracts in conjunction with the legal team. So we'll have like a boilerplate type or template type legal contract, and I'll send it over to legal for them to kind of review, handling all the red lines going back and forth. And then from that point forward, I'm kind of the main contact, leading all the way up to the event, handling, getting all the assets, getting all the information, giving them the information for the day of, collecting all the information, whether it's the ticketing, credentials, knowing who their point of contact is for the day of, handling travel and things along those lines. So it's definitely a hands-on process throughout the entire months leading up to the event.
So it's also really helpful to be able to have a conversation. One of the reasons I really like working with smaller independent promoters is being able to have a closer relationship with the buyers. And then this way you can know more the nuances of it. An artist may not necessarily be a headliner, but there is a relationship there that we want to grow or foster. So while their contract may not say, they get X, Y, and Z, you want to still make exceptions for certain ones. And those are relationships that maybe only the buyer really knows about.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I have to have those conversations with my bookers at various festivals, because it's nice to know, like, maybe something got messed up at a different show. And if there's something we can do to make them feel special at this one, or give them a bigger green room if we can, or maybe they really want to hang out the whole weekend. I need to know those kind of things. So those are things that are maybe communicated not as much in the contract, but need to be spoken, to kind of understand the relationship and help to foster that.
Got it. So I know this is nuanced, but in the scenario where there is a distinct buyer or booker, and then there's you guys, are you creating like structure around the communication, or are you trying to just communicate where you can with on each artist, or are you running down the list of the different artists with them right away? How do you like to have that conversation? Alex, why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, sure. I would say once even the majority of the lineup is built, that's where I'll start, kind of the process of running through everything and just a check-in of like, hey, what do we want to allot to each, maybe like opener versus headliner, mid-act, that kind of thing. And then from there, if contracts, and in some events I'm also doing contracts, so that's makes things easier, kind of like Mark was saying, but being able to find those contracts is generally the next step. And then if they have writers, just building from there, that's when I start to build, folders, a digital Google Drive, whatever it is, folder, and start to get things really structured with my overall advance sheet, and then start moving forward with that. And usually I'll run it by the talent buyers or bookers just to see if there's any red flags for them. Sometimes they don't have a chance to really look through it, but if they can, it's always nice just to get that kind of second set of eyes on it.
Anna, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know how we survived without Google Drive. Like that was a time that happened, but I don't have any memory of it. So, but like that's what we're doing, is building out a digital, kind of storage for all of this information. And what I'll do, it depends on the event and the relationship with, the producers, but I will tend to just make that grid, and I'm like, okay, you fill it out. How many tickets do they get, or whatever the key points are that I need, along with their main tour manager and production manager info. And any of those key points, like Alex was saying, those are the most important things to kind of start getting then my advanced process rolling.
Yeah, Anna, I know our conversation yesterday, you were talking about the old dogs with the quarters. You got to. Yeah,
well, I just been lucky to be on the road with a couple old road dogs who have told me stories about carrying quarters, like weighing down their pants, like carrying quarters in there, so that each stop on tour they could advance on a payphone. Like, I can't even imagine what that world was like, because I never was a part of it. Mark, maybe you can speak a little bit, but I think it's so interesting because we do everything now on the computer,
Yeah, Mark,
it's funny that you brought that. Yeah, back in the early days on like Lollapalooza and things like that. I mean, we had our archaic old Apple computers, and we had, the old big cell phones, and that's how we did it. We would have to have a list of like 900 names, and we would just call everybody ahead of time and doing that. And you had to find a printer to go print it out to share those documents to your team on a daily basis. So it's funny that you brought that up. It reminds me of the quarter days for sure. Trying to find a payphone somewhere at a venue to get ready for the next few days.
We're very lucky to be in the industry at this time, I feel like, because we have access to so many different, formats and platforms that can help us in what we do. But like, really, Google Drive is my top thing there.
That's something I've learned being on both sides, and kind of like you were saying, I'm trying to craft my advances now so that they're easy to do mobily. Because if you can't do it on your cell phone, or it's going to take longer until you can be able to sit down at a laptop or whatever it is when you're on the road. So even if it's like the website that I'm using to advance, or the sheets, I've started to drift away from Excel and things like that to collect information, because if you can't do it mobile, it's going to take people twice as long to respond.
Chris, you'll have to host one just about advancing on your Apple Watch.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I want to add one thing to that. I think in all these years of doing like multi-year events, like, I created a series of emails that kind of go in succession, depending on, once we kind of get the green light for the talent. And then from there, I just send them, we need this from you. We need to approve your contracts. We need to get all these different assets and things along those lines. And it just makes it so much easier to kind of just cut and paste and just throw it into the email as we move along, and not forgetting any of the steps along the way. And going back to what you were saying with the Google Drive and Google Sheets, you kind of have your check boxes as you go along, so everybody in all your different teams can look what's happening in real time or get access to any of the different assets that you need. So definitely a lifesaver.
Lifesaver.
It's the power of formatting.
Yes.
Even knowing what to put in bold so that when someone's scrolling through an email, they know where to find it easier rather than having to dig through and search 12 emails at once.
Well, I know I'm supposed to be the tech guy, but I have to imagine, and Anna, you and I were talking about this yesterday, there is still the room and need for an analog phone call at times too. And so what's your thoughts, Anna? I'll kick it off with you on that versus, relying on just the email, just the text, just the systems and things of that nature.
Yeah, like whether you are tech savvy or not, it's nice to get on the phone and communicate. This is nice to have a conversation like this. And we all, I think, are more appreciative and find the beauty in that post-COVID, especially when we all couldn't communicate in person. So it's very helpful for me. I find, especially in country music, to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, saw you in Nashville, or like, oh, that show was great, or how are the ACMs? Let's run through this really quick and let me get a couple more things down. And I need to do that for hospitality anyway. So from the hospitality side of things, I'm always getting on the phone and running through a rider. So why not just do a little bit of that AR advance while I usually do the two departments together, depending on our events. That's what our company does. So, we'll just run through those main talking points, and I find it very helpful. And I think certain tour managers really love it. And some can just fill out the advance, and we don't really need to talk more than email, but case by case basis.
And Alex, anything from your end? Do you have to get on calls every now and then, or?
Absolutely. I also do a combination of transportation, hospitality. I'll kind of develop a team that'll oversee those things a little more closely, but I start the process with all of that. And it's case by case, like Anna said, it's just, some people prefer to be over the phone, and sometimes when it's a little more nuanced and a little bit more tricky than some more basic advances, it's easier to just chat on that. And also, it's easier sometimes when I don't have all of the information, maybe from the production side, before I send out a full advance. So it's almost like a pre-advance to at least be able to get on the phone and answer like the more crucial questions before I'm able to send out like a full packet of everything.
So when is the ideal time to Mark? Do you have something? No, go for it.
No, I was just gonna say it was real quick. I was gonna say on that part too, it's really interesting. In some of these music genres, you still have some of the managers that are very old school, and they're not very tech savvy. And I'm not going to name any names here, but so you definitely have to get them on the phone, talk them through all the points, and some of them want cash up front, kind of a thing. And you're like, no, that's not how things work anymore. So, I think all of us have gone through that at one point or another in our lives. And I think the other part too, what Anna was mentioning, is that, you get to talk to that person away from LinkedIn and all these other places, and you get a better connection with them. And so when you're on site, you're like almost instantly friends. You're like, oh, wow, great to see you. You already have that history together. So I think that there's two parts to that, getting on that analog side.
And sometimes, depending on the genre, it's all text message for me too, which is somewhere in between.
So
they're still on their Blackberries.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. So who is the oldest of old school genres? And old school doesn't have to mean bad in this case. So Anna,
Mark, you brought it up. You have to call it out. I'm not saying anything.
You don't have to call out an artist. The genre is not going to come back and bite you.
Well,
anybody from Wu-Tang.
All right.
I love them, by the way. I love those guys, and I love all their managers. But that's one.
I think that there's lots of there's an age range in our industry that is amazing. I mean, that's where that's how we learned. Like, that's where I came from. You know what I mean? So there's an appreciation of, in any genre, there's all different kinds of people that have been advancing different ways. So I think all of us are in agreement that we'll kind of cater and change our advance process to who we're dealing with, you know, for a better experience for them on site. It's our job to represent our producers and also that artist and bring the two together and make a logistically seamless, as much as we can, event for them, you know? So however we need to communicate, that's all part of the process.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, so when is your ideal time to begin the advance? And it may change depending on type, size, but I'm just curious, like if you could set out an ideal time frame and structure, what is the time frame that you like? Alex, why don't you go ahead, Anne. No, go ahead.
1.5 month out, 2 month max kind of person, because a lot can change in that time. Tour managers move on, they take different gigs, things move around, production managers. So my personal advance really does start about 1.5 months out, I'd say.
Okay. And Alex, how about you?
Yeah, I am for the same time frame. 6 weeks is ideal, but I'd be lying if I said I hadn't advanced the day before. You know, it depends on who it is. And sometimes I like to send the majority of information at once when possible. I like to have all of the information in one place and have it correct rather than having to go back and say, oh, this changed. So sometimes just because of other departments or just whatever it is, I'm not able to get that information until a few weeks before. But of course, you know, relatively early is always ideal.
Got it. And talk to me about that initial communication with the other party. So are you trying to give them all the details up front? Or do you have different deadlines depending on what you need? And what does that look like in that initial piece of communication? Anna, why don't you go?
I find it easy. I mean, it depends, of course, like everything, but like just give them one deadline. Let's not make their lives any harder. They have 1 million shows that they're advancing, and I'm only asking them to advance one with me. So I don't know how many deadlines these guys got on their plate. You know what I mean? I try and make it just one deadline. This is when we need it by. But then, of course, the guest list is usually after that. That can be closer to the event. I don't need that by a very specific time, especially with some of the systems out there. You can put in your guest list and it gets sent right to the box office anytime throughout the show. That's a beautiful blessing and something that we utilize at Pilgrimage Festival as well. So, but for the main deadline, I try and just make it one. And yeah, we're giving them a ton of information in that initial advance, but I also need a lot of information from them. And I try as much as possible to mix a production advance with an artist relations advance so that we're talking about what they need for all of their normal logistics and also all of their production and technical needs in one fell swoop. And we can all receive the back end of that information.
Awesome. And Mark, you talked about that template communication that you've put together over the years. What's that first? Is that similar to Anna, or how is yours a little nuanced?
Yeah, we try to set the expectations in the first email. So I'll kind of immediately have a couple of bullet points of like, what do we need immediately right now? So whether it's like the headshot bios, point of contact, who we should be dealing with moving forward. And then I'll kind of stagger it as we go along. The kind of answer to your previous question, like I'm already starting the advance for shows coming this October, November already. Oh, yeah. But knowing that there is going to be those delays when it comes to contracts and some other aspects of it. But a majority, you know, we've done it all the way up to like a week prior to. But yeah, I think, you know, going back to what Anna was saying, is you don't want to overwhelm them right off the bat because they do have so many different shows and so many other projects happening. So you just want to kind of do little small asks as you go along. And as you get closer, then you start hitting them with the big stuff, like getting their travel taken care of and their guest lists and other needs that they may have.
I usually send it at once, but break it down a little bit. So like, you know, it kind of winds up coinciding, but hospitality, transportation, those things I'll have that as one deadline first, and then know myself what I actually don't need until a little bit later. So I'll make the deadline the same for everything else, but I'll kind of be a little more lax on the deadline for like guest list or, little things that I can kind of flex on last minute. That.
And how much are you guys chasing stuff down?
That's when we can call people out. No, I'm just kidding.
Go ahead.
No, there's always a couple, like I said, people change positions, we change jobs. So like sometimes it, even like going back to the booker, I'm like, hello, I really need to talk to the manager, an agent, anyone. And then sometimes, they'll put everybody that they can on one email and say, this girl needs info, give Anna the info that she needs. We need catering numbers or whatever. So sometimes that happens, but it's few and far between. It's only usually a couple stragglers. And to be honest, it's usually when artists are first starting out in the industry and their positions, the people around them are moving around and they're just finding their way. So we'll get what we need usually in the end. We'll play the show.
You can tell who's on tour based on the timing, and I try to be respectful of that as well. But I find, again, not to call anyone specific out, but I always find hip hop runs a little bit later than some of the other genres that I work with, and so just anticipating that and planning for that when I'm doing my advance too.
So one of the things that I'd like to break down, if I could, for a large show, and obviously this may change for a different size show, but what are the specific things that you are collecting, advancing from the artists? Right? And I know I know it's a variety depending on the show and the experience, but if you could just kind of give me a laundry list. Alex, do you want to start, and then maybe Mark and Anna can fill in?
So all the things that I include in the advance, is that?
Sure.
So it depends on the event, because there's some where I do, a little bit of everything, and there's some where I'm only doing one specific part. But usually with artist relations, for me, I'm covering transportation, hospitality, hotels, either if I'm booking or just making recommendations with discounts, things like that. Dressing rooms and what's available versus what they need. I try to get them set times and contacts for production. I try to keep usually production advances separate from artist relations, but at the same time knowing that they work in tandem. So I'll provide contacts for production, but don't necessarily CC them, because our production team is already, getting a million emails. They don't necessarily want to know about what type of milk they're getting. So I think those are the majority. Oh, and guest list are probably, the main components of it.
Cool. Anna, anything else that you would add to that list?
Yeah, I think Alex nailed it, but like cred numbers and catering numbers are the most important, because those are things that we have to pay for. You know what I mean? So it's like catering needs to know, and my whole advance will be around actually that catering deadline. Credentials, we order enough. In most cases, you're going to have their creds, and we need that info, but like the catering numbers are important to give them an estimate of what we're going to be doing per day. And then of course we always pad it a little bit, because you never know what's going to happen. And then the number of vehicles that they're trying to bring in is very important as well. And nowadays, and Chris, we spoke on this a little bit, but security, like connecting them with security and making sure that they have the security contact. And if there's someone dedicated just to their stage area or backstage, and I'm able to do that intro, especially with my headliners, I want to make that intro as soon as possible so that they can start their communication and understand what our security protocols are for our event.
That's awesome. And Mark, how is that similar or different in your world with these, high-end speakers and things of that nature?
Yeah, it's very similar for sure. I think, I once before, I think I sent you a long list of all the different asks that we have for this thing, and it ended up being almost like 2 pages long for these events, because we try to handle every aspect of it. A lot of this information that you're asking from them is, in a sense, private and confidential. So you got to be very careful about that, especially when it comes to travel, when it comes to contracts, getting all their legal names, what entity you have to put the contract under. And then I think biggest challenges, besides just getting all their assets, the bios and the headshots, is just who are all the right people you need to talk to. I think Anna talked about, a lot of times they'll CC everybody on an email and you have no idea who's who. So just trying to find out who is the right person that you need to talk to, whether it's about publicity, it's their point of contact for the day of, the tour manager, who's handling all travel, or we're basically handling the travel. And a lot of times also at the events, the talent needs to be doing other things besides whether performing or speaking. They have sponsored obligations on site. They need to do appearances, meet and greets, and things along those lines. So managing all that aspects of it. So it's just, you basically need a lot from them. And then, as he goes back to before, having that Google Drive to manage all that different content and all the different assets there is ideal.
Awesome.
And one part that I had to add this past year, which I think most of us have had to, is the COVID elements. What the festival's specific procedures are and what documents we may need ahead of time, letting them know what our safety practices are for our staff and what the patrons are doing, and just, what we need from them in advance for that.
That was pretty crucial for us too. Exactly. Making sure that they needed to be either vaccinated or have their tests ahead of time and getting that on site.
Got it. And I'm sure that obviously changes depending on where you're at, but where the festival's at and jurisdiction and all that stuff. Are there particular items that tend to create more friction or harder to track down, or just require more communication? Of that list of things that you guys are advancing, is there one you're always like, all right, I gotta dig into this and make sure I'm really kind of following up and make sure I'm communicating as clearly as possible, or is it all the same?
Well, Mark probably knows more about this than me even, but I feel like production and everything that they need to go into talking with the stage manager and the production manager, that's out of my world. I can help with the beginning process of it, but they really have to get on the phone and go through a lot of stuff. Like that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I mean, that takes up quite a bit of it, because a lot of things that we work with the music side, but then we also deal with speakers and talk side of things. So we're dealing with almost two opposite production teams, and then we're also dealing with editorial teams and producers and things along those lines. So there's a lot of back and forth going on between talent's management and the production side.
And it's kind of a domino effect. Until they know what's happening with production, they may not know or have answers for artist relations. So until they know what time sound check is or load in or whatever it is, we won't know what transportation needs they have. And then even with catering and hospitality, if they're coming in earlier, do we also have to provide breakfast, that sort of thing. So it's all connected like that.
Got it.
I mean, it's an interesting point that you brought up there, because a lot of these things you can plan months in advance, but everything comes down to like the 48 hours or 24 hours or even, few hours before the door opens. So everything's in constant change and flow, and you're changing car service, you're changing what time they need to be on site or what time the set times are constantly. So you need to have that communication with all your teams and then also with the artists about that.
But that's why music industry professionals are the best. Like, we should do everything because like we have to change on a dime, and that's what we're teaching to, interns and the younger generation and like all of our staff, and it just keeps flowing, So anyway, it takes a talented group of people to do that. Like, not to toot our own horns, but
So the things are obviously always changing. What you're collecting might be different depending on the size and type of event. But what about the core structure of the advance? Does that change? Is it the same? What's your guys' thoughts on that? Alex, why don't you go?
I typically keep it relatively the same. I've kind of built a structure over the years based off experience, and then just kind of tweak it based on the event. So if it's an email template or a grid that I usually use, the reason I use it is because it gets the job done and it's a fail safe. And even when I'm sleep deprived and my head's not all there, I can always go back and reference that because I can trust the systems that I've built. And because of that, I try and keep it, in the same general wheelhouse. And then, like we said, just kind of tweaking it based on the event and its needs.
Anna, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. And I also want my advanced form that they're filling out to present itself in a grid that makes sense to me. So I know I can change it around after the fact, but I want it to already be that way. So of course I want their name first and their date of play and what stage they're on. Like I have a couple things that I know I want to have very first so that anyone can open up my grid, their responses that they've filled out. And it's a pretty easy flow of information that makes sense from what we would need right off the bat, and then into their more specifics like catering numbers and those kind of things.
Sure.
I also like to include, I do a tier system, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more with hospitality, but I like to always ask for their 5 must-have hospitality items, even if they're a headliner, because at least then I know what is the most important thing to you. The tour manager knows what is the most important thing. If you could list 5 things out of that rider, if you only could get 5 things, we'll probably give you more. But if you could only get 5, what would that be? I like to include that too.
Got it. Well, that actually brings me to the Onsite piece. What, if anything, are you doing to organize you and your team for the arrival of these artists and talent on site? Obviously, you've pretty much gone through the advance now, and now you're just kind of getting ready for them to arrive through the doors. What are you doing at that point?
Let them wing it. I'm just like, you guys got this. Open your email and go. You got it. I try to share them on the grid. I mean, I want them to be my staff to be shared on all the information they can. And even though it is a little old school, I still like to make binders, and I like them to have that binder. If it stays in the office the entire weekend, that's fine with me. But at least they know they could flip it open and see what we talked about on our advanced call. So the notes from those calls I'm making, I actually want to include, as well as those main hit points of the logistics throughout their day. And that's, the best we can do to prepare them. I also introduce them to the tour manager in that week prior welcome email, which is just like a recap of advance, I guess. I don't really have a name for it, but my welcome email. And I introduce them then and tell them that their liaison will text them the day before. So the 24 hours before, that liaison who's going to be their on-site contact is chatting with them. Mark, is that how you do it with when you're handing it off to your on-site person?
In a weird way, I am the on-site person.
You are everything.
Yeah, so,
I know how you do it. Do you have an assistant?
Yeah. So I mean, for us, it's very similar. I'm the on-site person for a lot of this stuff, the main point contact, but I also have a team of up to like 25 people the day of. So we break them into different organizations, whether it's the talent escorts, the talent check-in. I'm the point person for all the talent management to contact me the day of. I'm also the point person dealing with security and production. So definitely have a lot of hats during that day. But I'm old school too. Like, I'll have everything printed out. I'll have base sheets so everybody knows exactly who the talent is that's coming. I'll also have all that information grid on iPads for all of our team. I'll have one central location, whether it's in the green room, for all of our teams to like go back if there's information or questions. I'll also have somebody helping me manage the travel. So in real time, we're dealing with hotel challenges, car service, flights that are getting canceled. We're on the phone with our travel agents, managing all that. So a lot of moving parts, especially for some of these bigger events where we're dealing with up to 150 plus talent and musicians, we're also dealing with the entourages. So you're imagining almost another 400 to 500 plus people that are coming through our dedicated check-in area. And it gets crazy. I mean, it gets nuts, and you're trying your best to manage it all. All I got to say is have a good pair of running shoes on or walking shoes, because you'll end up doing 20 to 30,000 steps, depending on your venue and things along those lines. But I think going back to what you were saying, Anna, it's just having all that pre-planning, all that information ready to go, having it accessible to everybody so that on the fly, anybody can find out about anything. Like, okay, this person is running late. get their point of contact on the phone, get the driver on the phone, find out how far out they are, and then communicating that to all the different production teams or on-site people that you need to do.
And Alex, anything from your end?
It's another one of those areas where, thank God, I'm in this age doing it, and my team has access to the grids that I build or that we build. We do tend to try and fill in like backups because sometimes cell service or data, whatever, is not the most reliable when you're in the middle of a festival. And so like basic things like keep the schedule on your lock screen, and have clipboards ready, if we have to print out schedules or the grids or whatever it is. And then I usually have liaisons contact the artists the day before, worst case morning of, and I let the artists know ahead of time that that's who will, like, there will be a point contact person reaching out to them, but that I'm also always available, because I do try and have my pulse on all of it without micromanaging too much. And then just building structure. So like I mentioned before, I'll have a transportation manager, a hospitality manager, and then my artist relations coordinator who will help manage all those different sub-departments. And then this way it's not everything on one person, but everyone working cohesively together. So if a liaison needs to grab hospitality for, the team who's pulled in 6 other directions, everyone's still on the same page. We're not luckily unionized on some of the smaller events or anything like that. But yeah, it's a balance between sharing that workload and not taking on too much yourself.
So you guys, it all seems like your core staff balloons a bit around managing the artists and talent around on site. Do you have any tips for training those individuals who are coming in like the day of or a couple days into load in? And do you have any tips on training or communicating with them so that they're kind of walking in lockstep with your plan? Anna, do you want to?
I mean, I don't want to train someone brand new 2 days out before an event, but it definitely has happened. But, we work with seasoned professionals that have been doing different roles. I love to move people around if they want to try AR and they've only done hospo, and one of the biggest tips that I give them is like, you're dealing with a person. This isn't like I don't care who they work for. It's a tour manager doing his job. We want to make his job easy, but he also needs to hold up his end of the bargain and work with us, and I just try and tell him it's only rock and roll. Like, let's not get too, I used to get very worked up and overwhelmed when I was younger and stressed. And I am trying every day to like be better about that. And I don't want to see that in my staff. I don't want to see that in the people that I am lucky enough to work with. I mean, let's just flow with it. We'll get it all done. It's going to happen. And like Alex mentioned, all these different roles, they're there for support. We're supporting one another. We all have our jobs to do. And like, you're never an island. And those are like the key points I try and tell them.
Cool. Any thoughts, Alex or Mark?
Yeah, I try and make sure that all of my staff has all of the information, unless it absolutely needs to be kept confidential. I really feel like the more information everyone has, the more empowered everyone is. And, like you said, of course, it's nice when you have like a seasoned professional with you, but for me, it's more about the attitude. If someone wants to do the work, wants to learn, wants to be there, sometimes it takes a little time just to figure out what the right spot is for them. But it's also being there for questions and, always having that open door for me, but also asking back the question of, well, what do you think? I hired you, I trust your judgment. What do you think? And then being able to kind of guide them from there. But I'm an overshare, if anything, when it comes to information.
Yeah. I think with me, I try to work with experienced people also. I try to tell everyone, we got to work as a team because everyone is dependent on the other to try, once talent comes on site, you're basically a representative of the event. So make sure you're hospitable, try to, if they're asking for something that seems a little crazy, try to your best and manage it. If not, come to me and handle it. The other big part is don't get starstruck. Don't turn into all of a sudden an instant groupie and start asking for autographs and photos and things along those lines. It's happened. I mean, I think we've all faced with that at one time or another, and you kind of have to remove that person and talk with them about it. Communication is always key, because if something is running behind, or if something is happening, or you can't find the talent, which has happened before, let us all know, so that we can handle it in real time and such.
Yeah, a big part of building that trust is having someone who knows when to ask for help, who knows when to, to say, hey, this seems off, is my gut right on that or not?
So Anna and Alex, you guys have been on both sides of the table, and I'm sure over the years, Mark, you have too, supporting the artists and the talent, but and obviously now on the event side. From the perspective of the artist side, do you have any tips on what would make your life easier if you were the tour manager, assistant tour manager, or the production coordinator? Alex, do you mind kicking that one off?
Sure. It's something that I've kind of has helped myself and my staff to be almost better at our artist relations job. Is like, I always tell them, try and picture yourself, even if you haven't been on tour, like what that might feel like, if you've done 12 shows in, 6 days kind of thing. What is that tour going to feel like? And that's always appreciated on the other side, I think. And then just having that information easily accessible. And even if you don't have all the answers, just sending out a response. I think like one of the biggest challenges is not hearing from anyone, not getting a response. And it's, even if it's just a sit tight, I'll get that info for you. Or, if the advance on the artist relations side is coming a little bit later than I'd like, just saying, hey, responding and saying, hey, what can I help you with in the immediate? What's most urgent? And then we'll get to all the rest later. Any sign of life, I think, is better than nothing at all when you're on tour.
Well, so, and I'll ask you, Anna and Mark, in a second. But what does 12 shows in 6 days feel like? Go ahead, Alex.
Been there.
Anna, anything from your end, being on the other side of the table? Any tips or advice you'd give a festival in working with you?
I think, what Alex said as well, but like, and we talked about this yesterday, but like less buttons to press, like let's make it as easy and streamlined as possible. I don't need to know every name that goes with every person that you're advancing catering for. Like there's certain things that we can, be a little loose about on the advance that I think helps on their end, because 6 shows or 12 shows in 6 days or whatever it is like a lot of advancing. So to try and keep it streamlined and as easy of flow in the advance process as possible for those touring groups, I think is super key, especially right now with so much changing with their dates and with just COVID is changing our world. So I think just trying to keep it as simple with where we still are getting the information that we need.
Awesome. And Mark, anything from your perspective over the years?
Yeah, I mean, again, like you were saying, the others were saying, that is, you're dealing with a lot of people that are dealing with almost like 200 plus shows, and this is just another stop on their tour or their whatever they're doing, their appearances. So, I think ideally, if there's a way, which I guess is what Lend is, having that one click where it's like a portal, and it just right there, it's like they can click through all the different things that they need, and instead of having that back and forth email chain going on and text messages and things like that, if you can figure out a way how to eliminate all that communication and CCing and, having the wrong people involved, or, things getting sent to the wrong people, just having that one thing where it's like, okay, for this event, I just click on this, I see the whole list, I'll just upload everything that I need to them, and then that's it. And then there may be a follow-up, 1 or 2 key follow-ups before the event. I think that's ideal for most people, especially for tour managers or tour management or artist management.
And when you have those formats, having the option, like if it's an automated sheet that you're filling out or form, Google, whatever it is, Lend, having the option to save and go back, because it's better to know, all right, at least my transportation's secured. The tour, the band or artist or whatever can live if we don't get our full hospitality rider, or vice versa. If you don't know where you're flying in from the day before, then at least the other things are covered there.
Awesome. And I'm curious if, and this one doesn't have to be overly practical, but kind of a fun one. If you could improve any aspect of the advanced process with technology, what would you do? Any thoughts there? Alex?
This is actually one of the reasons I started working with Lend was guest list. Always my Achilles heel day of, because that kind of thing always changes and you're working live with box office, who, is using their own platforms or systems or whatever it is. So that's an area that I think I need help in and has definitely been nice to use technology for.
And Mark and Anna, anything? And obviously, I'm not looking for a softball for Lend. It can be anything. But thank you, Alex.
I would say the same thing. I mean, we used Lend actually at one of our events in Chicago, and it was a lifesaver just because with the guest list was constantly changing, and people would come up and go, "Hey, I got 3 other people I got to bring in," and just getting it into the system. I think kind of what I just mentioned before, having that one-stop portal where we can just grab all that information and it makes it easier for the communication going back and forth. And I think the other part of it too is what information needs to be accessible to what parts of the teams. Because I think in a lot of us, in most cases, some of these festivals, events, I'm dealing with 10 to 15 different teams, whether it's PR, marketing, catering, security, and things along those lines. And they don't all need to see the same grid that I'm using in Google Docs. So I think having that kind of information that could go to different people is ideal.
Cool. And there actually was a question that came in around the operations, but I'm curious, Anna, what are your thoughts on AR advancing production needs over directly advancing with the production manager or stage manager, or does that change depending on the show?
It definitely changes depending on the show, but I like working with my production manager and being able to create the advance together, especially if you've done a show for many years and you're like in a groove. They can upload their information. They can upload anything about backline and lighting specs and anything that they want, and that information will be in that initial advance. And then when they go through, the production manager goes through and fills out this information, we're able to kind of separate out the production info from the rest of the stuff that even the stage managers don't want to be concerned with. And they have their own grid that they can always reference back to, but it's still coming from that one same point of reference. I really like that. I think that it's good. It's good for my team to know, that information that we agreed upon as well and what was talked about in the advance, even if the stage manager had a side conversation with the production manager, we're getting like the basis of it, the bones.
Cool. And Aaron, any, I know there's been some kind of questions coming through. Anything I didn't cover in some of this?
One piece, and is just where COVID has kind of played into all of this, and if there's been any things that you've added to the process or how you've approached that in the advance.
Any thoughts there? Why don't we start with Mark? Why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so we had our Complex Con Festival this past November in Long Beach, and that was the very first event that I worked on where we had to have COVID restrictions, especially with the California mandates that were happening. So all the communication that we had to put out there was you either had to be vaccinated or you had to test negative. We did have a full system in place where everybody that was coming into the building had to be checked, no matter who they were. And we did have testing on site if needed. We did have a few cases where either talent or their entourage had to not come into the building for that because we were very, very strict about it. And it was a very challenging case for sure. In some cases, some of the bigger names, we had to figure out different solutions for them. So it's just, we communicated it, we over communicated it way ahead of the event. We even asked it as we were advancing them, going, is this going to be an issue? If it is, do we need to know now so that we can, find another solution or not have you come to the event.
So how much are you guys keeping that separate from the advance, a part of the advance, a complement to the advance? Where is that complement? Anna, Alex?
I would say compliment. I try and include it with it. A few of the festivals that I've done, we've had like a waiver that we've asked the artist teams to sign, and then also had those available at check-in in order to get their credentials, and then have that proof in order to get wristbanded. I worked on the artist relations team for a festival that had zones based on where you were performing, what your level of performing, what time you were performing, to just try and mitigate exposure and how many people were crossing paths in a backstage area. And then if you're not vaccinated, where can you go? Can you go in at all? And just communicating that as much as possible ahead of time. Got
it. And were you the point of contact for some of that communication, or is it somebody else in the events that you work on? I have been the point of contact, but at the direction of either the medical director or festival director, whoever it was that kind of set those boundaries, and then just more making sure that they were followed through with, or, if there were any conflicts, then kind of bringing those to the right people. Got it. Is that about the same, Anna, for you?
I've just been so grateful that for 2021 and 2022, as we're entering into this, that we have COVID compliance officers. There's such a wealth of information. People have turned, switched gears from their career, original path and kind of taken this on. And I'm so grateful because, I have separate questions. And not only are we trying to relay our policies about COVID to the artist teams, we need to adhere by their policies as well. I'm receiving their tour rules also. I need to let our teams know about those, and we need to abide by those as much as they need to abide by ours. So having COVID compliance officers has been so wonderful, just a point of contact. And like Alex said, a medical director as well, just someone that, so if someone needs to be tested separately, or we have to make, some different things happen for them, we have someone to talk to about it. We have access to tests, and all of that is filtering through like one other communication person that knows way more about it than I do. Super. And I think part of it too is not just letting them know what we need from them, kind of like you said, knowing what they want, but also what we're doing internally. So like what steps our staff are required to take in order for that, what the patrons are required to have, and what's available, resources are available with that. I hope we're not having this conversation next year at this time. And I do see 2022 feeling like a light at the end of the tunnel, like a little bit looser on things. So we'll see, but I think keeping what we've already started to put into place in 2021 and moving forward that way, like over communicating can never be a bad thing. And just having a backup plan and then having your policies in place is like super important, no matter what your event is, no matter how big.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know we're a little bit over time here, so I can't thank you three enough for doing this. This is so much about, sharing the expertise that you guys have with everybody else. And I would say for those that are still on, or those who are going to watch the recording, if there are any other questions or comments, we want to continue to try to circulate this type of information because it makes us all better. Again, we're kind of at the core of this. We talk to so many people, and the reason why I want to have these conversations is just to continue to learn from you all. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm excited to take the recording and send it to you and send it to everybody who attended, but both also didn't get the chance to attend today. So thank you very much. Erin, do you have anything else from your end?
No, we're good to go. Just again, I'll follow up with the recording tomorrow, and Justin will also be doing an interactive demo next week. So we'll share the link for that for anyone who wants to dive a little bit more into the platform. So thanks again for joining.
Well, have a good one, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.